Darth Revan was one of the most well-known Sith Lords of the Old Republic era. Most fans are at least somewhat familiar with his story, that of a hero who fell to the dark side but found his way back to the light. But Revan's greatest contemporary is often neglected by fans, Darth Malak, his apprentice turned rival. This trend existed in-universe too. Malak was always left in Revan's shadow. He was with Revan from the beginning and went further down the dark path than Revan ever did, and yet many fans haven't even heard of him. Today, we're going to change that.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
In the years following the Great Sith War, a man named Alec was born on Quelly in the village of Squinquar Gesimus. He lived a simple life in his tight-knit community where the townsfolk were so close that they forsook family names, taking the name of their village as their own. There, he lived a peaceful life until the day the Mandalorians came. As part of the early stages of the Mandalorian Wars, the Jedi Crusaders swept through the sector, raiding the planet and devastating its civilian population. Alec's village was burned to the ground, and most of the people he'd known all his life were killed by the ruthless Mandalorians. Alec became a refugee, but was rescued from that life by the discovery that he was Force sensitive. The Jedi took him to their enclave on Dantooine for training, where he quickly rose to become one of the Order's most promising students. He became close friends with another Jedi trainee, a man the galaxy would later know as Revan. The two were noted by their masters as being eternally hungry for knowledge and quickly achieved the rank of Jedi Knight. As the Mandalorian threat continued to spread throughout the greater galaxy, Revan and Alec advocated for the Jedi Order to get involved. The Jedi Council ruled otherwise, declaring neutrality in the conflict, but as the Republic started to come under attack, Revan and Alec rebelled. Together with a group of Jedi followers known as the Revanchists, they broke away from the Order and started aiding the Republic. At first, the Jedi Council tried to have the Revanchists arrested, forcing many of them to adopt aliases to evade capture. It was during this time that Alec began operating under the name Captain Malak, posing as an officer in the Republic Navy. He later adopted the name permanently, though he stopped calling himself Captain. After presenting evidence to the Jedi Council that the Mandalorians had committed genocide on Cathar, the Revanchists were granted sanction and made Jedi generals in the Republic military. Revan and Malak became the military's supreme commanders, each receiving full command of a third of the Republic forces. They and their followers commanded a massive counteroffensive against the Mandalorians, gradually beating them back out of Republic space. Revan was a tactical genius, the likes of which the galaxy had never seen, but Malak wasn't nearly as strategically gifted, quickly developing a reputation as a blunt and aggressive commander. But while Revan was the better general, Malak was much more charismatic. Throughout the Mandalorian Wars, Malak would regularly go on recruiting drives, returning home to Jedi enclaves to talk the students there into joining the war effort. He was responsible for recruiting most of the Revanchists, including Mitra Surik, who would go on to become one of Revan's most trusted generals. On the battlefield, Revan and Malak complemented each other well. Revan was cunning and calculated, while Malak was aggressive and audacious, not unlike how Anakin Skywalker was during the Clone Wars. While Revan preferred to oversee battles from the bridge of his flagship, Malak was much more hands-on. At a full 2 meters in height, Malak was a giant of a man and tremendously strong as well. He was undoubtedly one of the most devastating lightsaber duelists of all time, something many Mandalorians learned the hard way. Over the course of the Mandalorian Wars, Revan and Malak began to slip from the path of the light. They became more accustomed to taking moral shortcuts, sacrificing entire sectors to win crucial battles. But their slide away from the Jedi path largely went unnoticed, as it was helping the Republic win the war. Together, Revan and Malak drove the Mandalorians from Taris, battled Cassus Fett at Jugga Cluster, and wiped out most of the Mandalorian army at Altir. But their most well-known victory was the Battle of Malachor V, the last battle of the Mandalorian Wars. In that final battle, Malak commanded the Republic reinforcement fleet while Revan boarded the Mandalorian flagship, slaying Mandalore the Ultimate in single combat. The Mandalorians were defeated, but Revan and Malak still had work to do. Following markers they found in the Trace Academy on Malachor, Revan and Malak vanished beyond the borders of the known galaxy, following the trail of a dark and ancient threat. Out in the unknown regions, they finally discovered the true nature of this evil. It was a remnant of the original Sith Empire, led by the fanatical True Sith cult. For generations, the True Sith had laid in wait, plotting their revenge against the Jedi and the Republic, and they would soon strike. They had driven the Mandalorians to war to soften up the Republic, and in the aftermath of the Mandalorian Wars, it seemed that no force in the galaxy would be able to withstand them. But Revan was determined to put a stop to these Sith. It wouldn't be easy. Their power was overwhelming and their techniques were tremendously destructive. Both he and Malak knew full well that the Jedi would never be able to win a war against them, as they had seen during the Mandalorian Wars. War of that scale was destructive to Jedi's connection to the Force. Most of the Revanchists had already fallen to the dark side or were at risk of falling. Indeed, Revan and Malak themselves were headed down the dark path. Based on this, Revan came up with a radical plan. He and Malak resolved to become Sith Lords in their own right and corrupt what was left of the Jedi Order. In the war that was to come, it was inevitable that the Jedi would fall to the dark side and become Sith, so Revan and Malak made sure they became their Sith. The Republic too would have to be corrupted, Revan determined. It needed to be reshaped into an empire to combat the Sith threat. This was a tall order, but Revan and Malak had a plan to make it happen, a plan based on discoveries they had made during the war.
Is this wise? The ancient Jedi sealed this archway. If we pass beyond this door, we can never go back. The Order will surely banish us. Are the secrets of the Star Forge so valuable? Can its power truly be worth the risk?
During the Mandalorian Wars, Revan and Malak discovered a number of ancient ruins scattered across the known galaxy. They hinted at the existence of an ancient, galaxy-spanning infinite empire, and at something else far more important than that. Deep within the ruins were the star maps, devices meant to display the location of an ancient superweapon called the Starforge. These maps were damaged and incomplete, but by seeking out a number of them, Revan and Malak were able to triangulate the Starforge's location. They found the weapon above Rakata Prime, a forgotten, unknown region's world, and seized control of it. The Starforge was a massive factory, capable of creating infinite numbers of battleships through the power of the dark side. Upon taking command, Revan set the Starforge to work building on an infinite fleet. He and Malak gathered the Revanchists and many of their other followers at Rakata Prime in secret, where they declared themselves the Dark Lords of a new Sith Empire. Soon after, they began their war against the Republic, the Jedi Civil War. Much of the Republic defected to join their Sith Empire, and the rest could do little against Revan's infinite fleet. When the two became Sith, Darth Revan had taken the title of Sith Master. Darth Malak had grudgingly become the apprentice. But as the Jedi Civil War wore on, Malak grew jealous of his former friend. The dark side began to corrupt him in ways neither he nor Revan had foreseen, in part due to the power of the Starforge. It is said that Revan chose the dark side, as one would choose a tool, and never truly fell, but this wasn't the case for Malak. Though Revan at first led him down the dark path, he travelled further down it than Revan ever did. 2 years into the Jedi Civil War, Malak attempted to kill Revan and usurp the title of Dark Lord of the Sith. The attempt was unsuccessful and cost Malak his jaw. Revan let his apprentice live, but this proved to be a grave mistake. Just a year later, when Revan's flagship was boarded by a team of Jedi led by Bastila Shan, Malak ordered his destroyer to open fire on Revan's bridge, hoping to kill his master and the Jedi in one fell swoop. It appeared he was unsuccessful, at least partially. Revan's flagship was destroyed and the Dark Lord was presumed dead, though Bastila Shan survived. Malak took Revan's place as the new Dark Lord, seizing control of the Sith Empire. The Jedi hoped that the defeat of Revan would cause the Sith Empire to fracture, deeming Malak to be the weaker of the two. They were catastrophically wrong. As soon as he secured his command of the Empire, Malak began a new offensive against the Republic, an all-out campaign of total war that the Republic was entirely unprepared for. Malak had none of his former master's subtlety and tactical ingenuity, but he didn't need it. He had an infinite fleet, after all. As Dark Lord, Malak desperately tried to move out of Revan's shadow. He abandoned Revan's plan for converting the Republic into an empire, choosing brute conquest instead. Where Revan had restrained himself from relying on the Starforge, Malak exploited the space station to the best of his abilities. Fully in the grip of the dark side, Malak was able to achieve a far greater level of control over the Starforge than Revan ever had, displaying his rapidly increasing power. Malak had always played second fiddle to Revan, who was generally considered the more powerful of the two. But during his time as Dark Lord, Malak outstripped Revan in a number of ways. His dark side abilities were much more advanced, and he had always been physically stronger than Revan, making him an equal in lightsaber combat. But Malak's greatest strength was drawn from the Starforge. He used the power of that dark nexus to bolster his power, and in turn, the Starforge became more productive under his command. It became 3 times more productive under Malak than it had been under Revan, churning out even greater numbers of Sith destroyers. Malak also took advantage of the Starforge's corrupting influence in ways Revan had never considered, imprisoning captured Jedi there and draining their power to strengthen himself. Of course, Malak's reign didn't last. As it turned out, Revan survived his assassination attempt and was brought back to the light by the Jedi Council. Together with Bastila Shen, Revan began searching for the Starforge, slaying Darth Bandon, Malak's apprentice, along the way. Malak managed to capture Bastila and convert her to the dark side, declaring her as his new apprentice, but Revan followed him to Rakata Prime. As a Republic fleet attacked the Starforge, Revan boarded the station, redeemed Bastila, and confronted Malak. Revan and Malak fought one last battle, but in the end, the redeemed Revan emerged triumphant. Malak was slain and soon faded into memory, second to his former master, even in death. So that's the story of Darth Malak, Revan's friend turned rival. But what do you think? Have you played Knights of the Old Republic yet? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.